The Justice League are one of the most popular and iconic superhero teams of all times. Designed to be the coming together of DC Comics' most beloved heroes, the JLA have remained an integral part of the company's storytelling ever since their original creation in 1960. As such, there is no shortage of great Justice League stories, from the likes of Grant Morrison's multi-year JLA run in the late 1990s, Mark Waid's infamous Tower of Babel, or Jeff Johns and Jim Lee's New 52 reimagining. However, when it comes to a story that, to me, personifies everything that makes this ensemble so iconic, it's hard to look past Darwyn Cooke's 2004 miniseries, The New Frontier. In a lot of ways, The New Frontier is a tribute to the golden and silver ages of DC Comics, reimagining the Justice League's origin and early heroics between the years of 1945 and 1960, and analysing the impact that these larger-than-life characters had on our culture against the backdrop of the real-world history that occurred throughout this period. It's genuinely an incredible comic book, and one I think serves as a perfect love letter to so many facets of the comic book industry and its history. So in this video, I want to explain how The New Frontier came to be, the various influences and inspirations behind this seminal series, and how the comic serves as a brilliant reminder of just why we love superheroes and comics, and what makes this, in my humble opinion, one of the greatest Justice League stories ever told. Before we continue though, just a quick reminder to leave a like on this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe to Owen Likes Comics so you don't miss out on any future videos. Before we dive into The New Frontier though, I first think it's important to discuss the visionary storyteller behind this comic, Darwyn Cooke, and just how he brought this iconic series to life. Cooke's career in the comic book industry began in 1985, when he approached DC Comics to hire him as an artist, leading to his first publication, a 5-page crime story in the company's New Talent Showcase, issue 19. From there, Cooke's career initially stagnated, with money troubles forcing him to eventually leave the world of comics and instead begin working as a magazine art director. However, in the early 1990s, Cooke again tried to break into the world of comics, replying to an ad placed by Bruce Timm looking for storyboard artists for Warner Bros. Animation. Cooke contacted Timm and pitched him a story, an early version of his one-shot graphic novel Batman Ego, and as such, he began working for WB Animation soon after, with arguably his most notable contribution to the studio being the beloved title sequence for Batman Beyond. Cooke's work for WB Animation led him to begin working for DC Comics once again, with Batman Ego being published in August of 2000, and the following year he became the new full-time artist on Catwoman, working with writer Ed Brubaker to completely revamp the character. It was during his time on Catwoman though that he and DC Comics art director at the time Mark Chiarello began discussing ideas for a brand new series, one far larger in scope than anything he'd previously worked on. As Cooke explained in a 2007 interview,
I was talking to Mark on the phone one day and he said, "Well, what do you want to do next?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I haven't thought about it really. What would you guys like to have me do?" He said, "We were talking about having you do a Justice League thing." This is 1999 and Grant Morrison was burning up the charts with Justice League at that point. I was surprised that they would want me to consider working with those characters.
With the premise of a JLA story now set in place, Cooke began to ponder just how he would attempt to create something unique for these larger-than-life characters. Eventually, he realised that he wanted to explore who these characters were before they formed the Justice League, as well as harking back to the eras of comics that he grew up reading. As Cooke explained,
"It seemed to me the only area that hadn't been combed over already was the time right before they became the Justice League. And then when I looked at the original publications and that era, the era sort of has always meant a lot to me, and I've been a bit of a student of it, in terms of history and sociology and, design and fashion. So it seemed like a perfect fit to me, and just ideally suited to, the types of things I could do with the Justice League that might be worthwhile."
With this in mind, Cooke began developing a story that would function as a tribute to the early days of these beloved characters, mixing real-world history with the changing nature of the superhero genre to demonstrate the evolution of the various members of the Justice League. The story would begin following the Second World War, a time when characters such as Batman and Superman had become massively popular with mainstream audiences, and follow their lives until the early 1960s, the time in which the JLA were actually created by Gardner Fox. It was an incredibly ambitious project for sure, but DC Comics approved of Cooke's pitch and encouraged him to bring it to life. While they initially had disagreements over which characters would be showcased in the book, they would later grant him access to the company's entire archives. To best understand both the history of the book's various characters throughout this period, as well as the art style and the types of stories that were popular during the time in which the comics set. As a result, every aspect of the New Frontier was designed to be a love letter to the golden and silver ages of the DC universe, with even the order in which the characters featured in the comic are introduced is designed to replicate the order in which they were actually created. It was this attention and reverence to detail that would make the New Frontier feel like such an incredible tribute to the company's characters. And whilst Cooke was still a relatively obscure name in the world of comics when he penned this series, by the time the New Frontier was released in early 2004, it became clear that everything was about to change. The bulk of the New Frontier's story begins in the early 1950s, with the news that the US government has declared war on illegal superheroes, with the Justice Society being disbanded and heroes faced with the choice to either work alongside the government or go underground as vigilantes. Most notably, while Superman becomes a state-sponsored hero, Batman chooses to go underground, leading to a high-profile showdown between the two heroes. Following this fight, Superman and Wonder Woman begin working alongside the US military as the international tensions of the day shift from the Second World War to the Cold War, with both heroes being deployed in Vietnam. Meanwhile, in Gotham City, the Martian John Jones is teleported to Earth in a science experiment, startling the scientist with his appearance, and as he slowly dies of shock, he warns John of humanity's fear and violence, urging him to never reveal his true form. Taking the shape of a private detective, John begins to work with the GCPD, investigating a mysterious cult abducting children. As Johns and his partner track the cult down to a local church, they discover Batman there fighting the cultists, and as the Dark Knight manages to hold them off, Johns and his partner are able to save the children that were being held hostage, before a fire breaks out and startles Jones. Later, Batman visits John's apartment, sharing information on the cult and the mysterious being that they worship, the Center. Batman informs John that he knows he isn't human, but believes he can trust him, telling the Martian that he has a $70,000 sliver of a radioactive meteor to stop the one from Metropolis, and all he needs for him is a penny for a book of matches. Another key character introduced in this part of the story is Hal Jordan, first seen as an Air Force pilot in the final days of the Korean War, where his plane is shot down while on patrol and he lands in a trench next to a North Korean soldier. Jordan attempts to defuse the situation, trying to inform the soldier of the ceasefire, but he's unable to remember the Korean translation. Perceiving him as a threat, the soldier attacks Hal with a knife, and faced with a life or death situation, Hal is ultimately forced to reluctantly shoot and kill the soldier, repeatedly muttering the correct translation as he's rescued. For a story that features so many characters from across the DC universe, Hal Jordan is in many ways the main protagonist of the New Frontier, with his morality and heroism being a guiding principle throughout each issue of the story. After the war, Hal begins working for Ferris Air, where he's trained as an astronaut as they prepare for a covert mission to Mars. However, after showing reckless behaviour during a simulation, Hal is pulled from the mission, with Rick Flag taking his place. As the shuttle launches for their mission, John Jones attempts to board the plane, seeking to return home. However, he's caught and apprehended by the US military. The ship successfully launches into space. However, once it leaves Earth's atmosphere, one of the crew members attempts to sabotage the mission, burning a severe amount of fuel in the process. It's here that Flagg reveals that the shuttle was secretly carrying nuclear weapons, realizing he can't crash land and return to Earth with them on board, and is ultimately forced to detonate the rocket and sacrifice himself to prevent the weapons from destroying the planet on re-entry. Sometime later, we see Martian Manhunter being detained by the military, where he has begun to strike up a friendship with King Faraday, a military official and the leader of Task Force X. Meanwhile, following Flagg's funeral, Hal Jordan is found once again in the simulator, regretful over not being there to save the mission and his fallen partners. However, once Carol Ferris arrives to talk with him, Hal mysteriously disappears, with a gaping hole left in the ceiling. Hal reappears in the desert, where he's been summoned by the dying Abin Sur, the Green Lantern. Sur explains that he has chosen Jordan to be his successor, and was chosen because of his courage, handing over the ring and warning him of a grave danger currently on its way to Earth. Confused, Hal puts the ring on and suits up as the Green Lantern, flying through the sky and eventually accepting his new powers and responsibility. As this is going on, Superman and Lois Lane begin to investigate the mysterious centre, with clues towards its existence being found in a children's book, whose author completed it before immediately committing suicide. Travelling to Gotham, Superman meets with Batman, as the pair agree to work together, revealing that their previous fight was staged in order to allow the Dark Knight to go underground and escape federal authorities. As Lois breaks the news of the centre's pending arrival, we see heroes around the world prepare to defend their world, from Atlanteans, Amazonians, and other heroes such as the Flash, who had previously retired and given up his heroics. The first hero to encounter the centre is Wonder Woman, as Superman discovers Diana bloodied and battered in her invisible jet, crash landing outside a military base. The base is put on high alert, as Lois Lane appears on TV, reporting that a mysterious creature has appeared 700 miles offshore, the centre. Sensing its arrival, Martian Manhunter is freed by Faraday, and sent to fight against the centre. John makes his way to the base as he joins an army of costumed heroes, including the Flash and Green Arrow. Superman leads the charge, flying directly towards the creature, only to be overwhelmed by its swarm of monsters, before the centre unleashes a massive blast of energy towards the Man of Tomorrow, whose body is launched into the depths of the sea. With Superman off the table, the heroes are forced to develop a strategy to defeat the centre, with the military and Hal Jordan raining fire from above, while the Flash will run around the centre at the speed of light, using Ray Palmer's matter reduction device to shrink it and allow them to destroy the creature. As the heroes embark on this daring mission though, the base is attacked by dinosaurs, with Martian Manhunter being hit by the centre's mental powers and shapeshifts into a dinosaur. As the heroes fight the dinosaurs in their planes, Faraday attempts to get through to John, breaking the centre's control at the expense of his own life. With Faraday dead, John enters a fit of rage, flying through the sky and destroying the entire army of dinosaurs. With these threats neutralised, the pilots led by Hal Jordan fly towards the centre, hallucinating as they move closer and closer towards the creature. While the other pilots begin to lose control, Hal is forced to rely on his will, using the Green Lantern ring to resist the centre's hallucinations and fly directly through the monster, weakening it and allowing the Flash to cover its surface with Palmer's shrinking device, causing the centre to explode. The celebrations are cut short though, as the heroes quickly realise the explosion is heading towards land, causing Green Lantern to cover the explosion entirely within his ring and throws it into space. With the centre now gone, the various heroes rejoice as Superman is revealed to have been rescued by Aquaman, who arrives on shore and returns the Man of Steel to Lois Lois Lane. As they unite, Jimmy Olsen snaps a photo of all of the different heroes celebrating, with the closing pages wrapping up the stories of each of these characters. We see the DC Universe enter the height of the Silver Age. The comic ends with Starro emerging from the ocean as the fully formed Justice League arrive to save the day, paralleling the team's iconic first appearance and bringing this tribute to the DC Universe full circle. One of the things that makes me adore the New Frontier so much isn't just the enormous scope that the comic manages to contain, distilling an entire generation of comics into a 6-issue series, but the clear reverence and love towards each character and storyline that it adapts throughout it. Virtually every page of this story is filled with tributes, references and nods to different parts of the DC universe, and done in a way that makes it truly feel like a love letter from Darwyn Cooke to these characters and storylines. Due to its structure and socio-political backdrop, I often perceive the New Frontier as something of a companion piece to Alan Moore's Watchmen. Whereas Watchmen seeks to showcase what would become of superheroes if they existed in the real world, the New Frontier seeks to show how these heroes would elevate and inspire the real world to become better. Cooke actually discussed this comparison in an interview, stating that,
"I can remember when Alan Moore did The Watchmen and Frank Miller did Dark Knight. For the following 10 years, whenever either one of them did an interview, they talked about how they never intended to turn their whole industry grim and gritty with those books. But that is what happened. And keeping in mind that it was 99, 2000 when I came up with the idea for New Frontier, I remember it being really important to me to kind of try and put out a story that reminded us of the heroic ideal, and remind everybody who was going further and further down the grim and gritty road, and that's readers and creators alike, what it was we loved about this stuff in the first place, and why it was special."
By choosing to tell a story set at the beginning of the Silver Age, Cooke isn't just writing about his favourite era of comics. Instead, he's highlighting an important aspect of this period's storytelling that he feels has become lost in more recent years. Specifically, his focus throughout the New Frontier is to showcase the untainted hope and optimism that superheroes represented back in the Silver Age, and seeking to remind readers of how powerful and inspiring superheroes can truly be. While the book doesn't shy away from the grim realities of both heroism and its setting, with the story of John Irons being the most visceral reminder, it demonstrates that superhero stories can still be nuanced and complex, without losing the larger-than-life feeling that makes the entire medium so beloved. In summary, The New Frontier is a brilliant tribute to the entire DC universe, not only the characters and stories that have endeared readers since the late 1930s, but also the themes that have ran throughout the comics as well. Truth, justice, hope, and heroism. All of these themes are at the forefront of The New Frontier, and as such, it's a story that reminds readers just why they fell in love with comic books in the first place, and why superheroes can be so important to the world, as a beacon of the things we could and should strive to be. It's a comic book that pays respect and tributes to the past whilst boldly looking towards the future, hoping for a new frontier built on these virtues and ideals not only for the comic book industry but the real world as well. As the closing line of the famous speech that inspired this book said, "All mankind waits upon our decision. A whole world waits to see what we will do, and we cannot fail that trust, and we cannot fail to try." And with all of this in mind, I think it's fair to say that The New Frontier is not only a brilliant tribute to the DC universe and its history, it's also a reminder of the unbridled genius that was Darwyn Cooke, and a true, unquestionable comic book masterpiece. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to leave a like on the video and leave a comment down below as well. Let me know your thoughts on everything we talked about in today's video. I can't wait to hear what you have to say as always. If you're new to Owen Likes Comics, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notify bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you want some more videos, there should be some others on screen right now that you might also enjoy. enjoy. If you want to help support the channel and help me make more videos, you can go to patreon.com/OwenLikesComics, and if you want some more of me, you can follow me on Twitter just at OwenLikesComics. That's all for this video though. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. So until then, take care and keep reading.